Hello and welcome to tonight's latest printed press. My name is Aysen Djemal and I'm bringing you the news from the UK and the world tonight. Our first headline is about Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn as they clashed over the NHS in what was likely the last Prime Minister's questions before the Christmas election. Britain's EU exit has dominated politics in recent weeks and was expected to be no different ahead of the 12th of December general election that is designed to break the Brexit deadlock in Parliament. But a reminder that Brexit won't be the only issue that decides who will occupy Downing Street after polling day. It was the NHS that was the focus of today's exchanges. Relatives of people who died in the Grenfell disaster say London fire chiefs should be sacked and face prosecution following a damning report. The report hit out at the London Fire Brigade for its emergency response to the blaze. The policy meant residents were told to stay in their flats by firefighters and 999 operators for nearly 2 hours after the blaze began just before 1 a.m. 12 migrants have been found alive in a refrigerated truck in northern Belgium. The men, who were originally from Syria and Sudan, were discovered by police in a motorway parking area outside Antwerp. Officers went to the scene after being alerted by the driver of the vehicle, which was transporting fruit and vegetables. The group has now been taken to an immigration office in the city. It actually comes exactly a week after 39 migrants were found dead in the back of a lorry in Essex. Some of the victims were believed to be Vietnamese. Very sad story. And now, tonight, I'm going to be introducing our guests tonight with us. Welcome ERIM METTO, the TCCA CEO, project consultant and filmmaker. Welcome ERIM to our programme. Thank you for coming. And HUSAYN HASHIM BAKYI, I done it right, I think, Chair of Cyprus Islamic Association. Welcome, both of you. Thank you very much for coming on my programme tonight. We're going to be discussing the importance of our heritage tonight. So my first question to the both of you is, what does heritage mean to you? ERIM, shall we start with you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's something that relates to who we are as individuals and where we actually come from. And it's important for us as a community, I feel, to preserve that for our future generations. If you think about it, that the aspect was that many of our forefathers were living in Cyprus and their decisions were taken to migrate to the UK. Those forefathers who came over to UK are these pioneers who brought over the culture and became part of the mainstream UK community. However, as time goes on, those stories and those aspects of what makes us Turkish Cypriot and what makes us part of who we are and the relationship we have with Cyprus is lost. Those documentation, those documents that existed, those accounts of what it was like, those stories of the hardship that initial migrants suffered are being lost in time, because obviously the generations are passing away and those stories not being preserved. So one of the things that me and HUSAYN want to do is to look at how do we preserve these stories and how do we preserve them for future generations. There is a far larger project that we're working on which relates to all of Cyprus, and we're looking for substantive funding from various funders, and it has moved quite a long way. But on a far smaller scale, we have received funding for a project that relates to the part of Cyprus we're from, which is called Galebrono.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, let's talk about that. I mean, before we go on to your actual projects, because it's very exciting and we're going to talk about what you're doing together and separately, can you just tell me a little bit about what your roles are within the community? Can we start with you?
Yes, I'm the chair of Cyprus Islamic Association. We were formed about 6 years ago. We work closely with the community in London. We also built bridges with other groups in Cyprus.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we try to raise funds and awareness of our cause, of our Islamic and our cultural heritage to our Turkish Cypriot community in London. And our Turkish Cypriot community in London have been great by helping our small association grow quite fast. We now work with 7 different organisations in 7 different countries, sending aid and working on educational projects. We've got a group in Bangladesh that we help some orphans, and an orphanage there, and a madrasa, like a school for orphans. And also outside of the orphanage, there's quite a lot of poor people in the village there, and we've been helping distribute clothes, money, food items. The same in Egypt and in Indonesia, in one of the islands of Indonesia that was struck by a tsunami 2 years ago. We've been working there for the last 2 years. And we also have a school in Bosnia that we sponsor 35 students, and every year they receive like a financial gift aid from us, from the Turkish Cypriot community in London, and they're hopefully going to be our future doctors in Bosnia. They're medical students.
And do you have like some sort of communication with
them?
I
go and visit them. I go and visit the teacher there, and I've got good contacts in Bangladesh as well, and we've got someone in Egypt. We've got a couple of people in Egypt that are helping us. So it's quite encouraging.
Amazing. That's another programme in itself. I think you need to come back and talk about this.
Hopefully.
And ERIM, also, if you could just tell us about your role in the community.
So my prime role is that I'm the current chief executive of an organisation called Turkish Cypriot Community Association, also known as Tıbbi Merkezi. It's the largest in context of Turkish charities in the UK, in the context of the amount of staff it has and the turnover it has per annum. We're an organisation that wants to work together with other organisations to serve those most in need, and we work with HUSAYN's group quite a lot. Outside of that, I'm a consultant for a number of other charities where I'd help develop projects in the UK and abroad. One of those was helping Syrian street kids in Istanbul, for example. And of those 24 organisations which I act as a consultant for, 11 are Turkish speaking. My love of my life is filmmaking, so filmmaking allows you to tell stories that are here today for future generations, and that kind of is another mechanism that empowers individuals for those stories to be told, and then to take them for future generations to see what actual life and what actual viewpoints were, because you can tell a story in written format, but the impact of something that's in something visual is far stronger. And I think one of the things that we're finding with the project we'll come to about the heritage is looking for that old archive footage that exists from the 1920s and 1930s around our individuals, which are our forefathers, that will be preserved for future generations.
I know, thank goodness there is things like that around actually, isn't it? Because it is pretty amazing. Let's talk about the project that you've got together now. I don't know how. So, do you like to start to tell us about it?
Yeah, ERIM actually is one of ERIM's ideas actually. We got together and thank God he got the funding.
Yes, he's good at doing that.
I'm trying to do the research on it. What I need to say is that a lot of our history is unfortunately oral history. The Turkish Cypriot villages, most things were orally related from great-grandpa to grandfather and the grandfather, and so a lot of it was lost in between, and things were added, I'm sure. But we are trying to go through Ottoman archives and find out more of the history. How did these people come to Cyprus? When they came to Cyprus, how many of them came? How many of them settled in the on the island, in the village? Who lived in the village before the Turkish Cypriot population moved into the village? Because we know it was an existing village. We've got loads of photographs, and we're asking people, if anybody watching today, can you please share your old photographs with us?
We've got some up there on there. Can you tell me specifically, there is one that means quite a lot to you. Tell us about that specific picture.
Yeah, this
picture. You pointed that out to me
earlier. This picture was taken probably between it's the one with the lady, the young girl. That's my grandmother, and the three girls in the picture share the same name.
Wow.
They're all three girls called Rukia.
Oh my goodness.
And they've all passed away.
Yeah.
Well, even the little boy has passed away as well.
How did you feel when you found it in the? Where did you find it in the British?
It's in a book in the British Museum, which is the Swedish archaeologist expedition in Cyprus between 1927 and 1931.
And how did you feel when you found it there?
Quite
Was
emotional.
it quite special?
Yes,
special moment.
Very, yeah.
This is the thing, and I think that's what you were talking about, isn't it? To actually preserve that.
I think for me, it dates back from the late 90s, and then being able to do projects that relate to safeguarding or seeing what people feel at that moment in time. In 2006, we got another large piece of funding from the Heritage Commission. We produced this book called Departures and Arrivals, which told the story of, I think it's something like 45 individuals migrated from Cyprus to the UK. We also did, in addition to this, a short documentary which is about 52 minutes odd lengthwise. The importance of that is that of the 6 people which we interviewed in 2006, only one's still alive. Yet those 5 other stories are safeguarded for future generations. So it tells us that thinking about something that you should do now, then you leave it till tomorrow. Tomorrow may never come. So for us, we felt that because of this story, we need to do a far bigger project that safeguards all the early Turkish radio stuff that appeared, all the first Turkish TV stuff that appeared in the UK, all the aspects around the first newspapers, and them to be able to preserve on the online site, for people to be able to interact with that site and be able to safeguard their own videos and their own pictures, and then for people to be able to have a kind of Turkish Cypriot Wikipedia location where they can go, access images, find out about their culture and reconnect with where their heritage is actually, where it actually comes from.
Okay, so you're going to actually create this?
Yeah, so where that comes into this, in discussing it with HUSAYN, I found that he had an amazing knowledge of where certain things come from our village, where the connections are, and you just have to pinpoint and say, where's that house come from, or where does that come from? And that really interested me, really engaged me, and because my 2 children are dual culture, so they're Turkish Cypriot and Australian, that it's important for me that the legacy that I leave down for them is what I would want them to know about where I've actually come from and where my parents have come from. Because my mentors and my idols are my parents, because they had to come from a village where they had travelled no more than probably 3-4 miles from that village. Then they suddenly get on a boat for a better life, come to the UK, to a vast city, right? Where they're kind of stuck in a room which is absolutely freezing, where the toilets are probably 3 floors down, where they have to go to public baths. They're my real heroes, and for me, preserving those stories is insurmountable for future generations.
I remember a lot of my childhood. I actually do remember sort of sitting by my nan and my nan telling these stories exactly what you were saying about, the fact that she was so sort of kept in her family sort of community. She wouldn't even go out of her house, and then all of a sudden she was hurled onto this boat, came over here with her husband, very, very young, having, with young children in one room. And when you hear those stories, they really are heroic stories, aren't they? And like you said, they're verbal stories, and we need to put them somewhere and document them and have it sort of in a solid place.
The idea we've got is that we want to do it in a multi-phased kind of way, which means that we will have a website which will have all the images and all the footage and all the stuff which is not just held by individuals but held up by locations and establishments. Like HUSAYN found that there's an organisation which went over from Switzerland to Cyprus, and they've got film footage of the village in the 1920s. We also want to safeguard the voices of people being able to say what they think of the village, and that's going to be put on as sound bites onto this website. And we also want to do an exhibition which would travel and kind of showcase images and stuff related to our community, to the wider community. And I think that what we want to do is allow it as a foundation for people to build on. So we don't want to say this is the project, we want to provide the foundation and then people can build on it. So my kids can grab it, or their kids can grab it and add to it, and it just kind of becomes a whole massive new kind of...
so almost like you're going to do the documentary, you're going to be investigating, finding out the history, gathering all the sources, and then putting it somewhere, archiving it, and then eventually having projects where you can actually expand it.
The important thing is, like for me, is that when we did this project, which was over 10 years ago, there's people that we forgot to interview, and there's information that we didn't get at the time, we found out afterwards. We don't want to make a mistake again of that happening. We don't want it to be a definitive project. We want to give the capability of people to be able to add to it.
That's
Can I say something? With especially with the Cultural Heritage Project for our village, it's only now that we're finding out that there was like early migrants to the UK just after the end of the Ottoman Empire. There were certain individuals from the village that came here in the 1930s.
Hundreds of years before, and I think it's the same with us. And this is the point.
And the other day I shared a photograph of a young man who came here and died, had a motorbike accident. And that was before my mum was born. So that was like 71 years ago. This young Turkish Cypriot guy comes here and tragically dies in a motorbike accident, gets
And
buried,
gets forgotten.
and in Kent
Not
somewhere.
anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
I mean,
anymore.
there's things like when you hear these, you said you heard stories from your mum and
Yes.
your gran and all that
Yeah.
sort of thing related to their migration, the importance of what Cyprus meant to them. There were stories that I remember from my mum saying to me that she used to play in the playground in school and then suddenly there's bones on the floor and stuff.
Yeah, because of the old cemetery.
Because there's an old cemetery where the school was built on, which is important. And you find out that the village was previously occupied by Egyptians. So
Well, that's it.
So
Well, I have stories like that. My dad used to go swimming. He'd go underground, and they would find like fossils and
vases
little carvings, little sculptures from Egyptian times. My dad's still got some, you know, in his room, like, you know.
Cyprus is like an open air museum.
It's
Anyway.
just amazing, and they would just go as children go diving into the water and find these amazing, you know, historical things that should really be in a museum. And it's just, like I said, it's very important, I think, for our heritage.
Wouldn't it be great if your grandkids could want to find out about their culture, and then you've lost the connection you have with your past, but they can go to this site and they can interact with other people that have actually placed information on that site and be able to utilise it for their own well-being.
Yeah,
I think that'd be totally amazing.
So it's a website that you're thinking of doing as well, some sort of live.
Yeah, there's 5 bits that we think. One is a website, which will be able to be added to. So we put the bits that we already have and all the footage that we have, but it can be added to at any time. The second is we want to do a documentary. The third thing, which HUSAYN will be the lead for mainly, would be to write this book, a complete encyclopedia of
what we know already.
What we know, and it goes back to the Egyptian times, how long the Egyptians occupied there, what we know about that, what the myths of the village are, because the important thing is that there's a lot of stories, but some are myths. But those myths come from somewhere.
Yeah.
So it's important that we safeguard those. We also want to do a travelling exhibition around artefacts related to our community, i.e. luggage cases that they might have brought over when they first came over, images, and the final bit is sound bites, because sound bites are so easy to do. You have a mobile phone, you record someone's voice, what they mean to, that goes on there. Now, I can just about remember my grandfather's voice, but if that's there, then my grandfather's voice would have been heard by my grandchildren, by their grandchildren, and there's a through connection through that.
And it can be stored.
And
future generations can go back to it.
And hopefully, other than that, I'm thinking ahead now, maybe we could actually have a building where all of these things are preserved as well.
Yeah, I mean, Hussain told me that in the village that there's about 3 museums. They're mini ones, but they're museums.
Cultural houses.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they contain information on there. But the main project that we want to do will be having all this on a far larger scale, where it's not just related to our village, but related to all of the Turkish Cypriot stories that came from Cyprus.
I think so.
And not just in the UK, but worldwide. So we're talking about Australian Turkish Cypriots, people who migrated to Canada, Turkey, Germany. So we as a community are throughout the world.
We are. We're very scattered, aren't we?
We are indeed, yes. So I think it's important those stories are preserved.
Preserved, and we sort of brought together, really, bringing us all together a little bit more.
Our village, for example, and which the project is based about, was one of the largest villages before partition, before the war, before the events of 1963 as well. It was one of the largest enclaves of Turkish Cypriots in the Karpaz region after Galatya. There was 1,000+ villages. A lot of them immigrated to Turkey in the 1920s when the Republic was founded in Turkey to seek a better life. I came across a historical document several months ago, and no one in the family even knew about this, that in the 1920s there was a famine in Cyprus, and several people in the village died because they wanted food, they couldn't find food, and they ate poisonous berries, and they actually died. And all the villagers went to Malta, to Famagusta, to the British governor to complain about their plight. And they demanded that the British open up the grain stores, give them grain to take back to their kids, or if they don't, they were asking for a petition from Turkey to take them all to Turkey. So we might not have been here today.
Really? Yes. You know that story.
And these are really important parts of history.
Very important parts of history, and actually finding that and evidencing and putting it somewhere is extremely important. And we've talked about your project together, and it sounds very exciting, and we'll be following you, and hopefully you'll be coming on our program and telling us as you're going along, because like I said tonight, you know, we should be speaking out really to our audience. And if anybody does have anything, like you said,
Yeah.
so we don't forget anybody this time, if they do have any bits of pictures or
Yeah.
stories or
I mean, what we're going to try to do
objects.
what we're going to try to do as well is that there's going to be stuff that we can't access. For example, showcasing Turkish Cypriot weddings from the village and stuff like that. So what we try to do is replicate that with the footage from maybe other villages, which will be very similar to our village, for
Yes.
example. So
Give people an idea. of
giving
what it
people
was
an idea,
like.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'd
Yes.
like to send a message out to those
Yes.
watching today.
Yes. Go on, yeah, go on.
If there's anybody out there that's got old film reel,
Yeah.
can be from the 1960s, 1970s, could be from the 1980s, anything from any VHS recordings, please contact us.
Yeah.
We will look after it and we will give it back to you in one piece.
Yeah, and what the idea is that we will record it onto a digital format. We will let you have access to the digital format, and you'll have your footage back as well. So that's the idea.
Offer that cannot be missed, I'm telling you now. They're going to be looking after your things. We've talked about the projects together. How about separately? Should we just, I mean, we've touched upon some of your projects.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to tell us about any projects that are happening at the moment?
We've got a lot of stuff going on at the moment. We're working on certain projects. Our main busiest time is the time of Ramazan. We say Ramazan in Turkish, Ramadan, for those English speaking people. It's the busiest time of the year because people want to give to charity. So we do a lot of collections. We will again this year be funding our students, medical students in Bosnia. We'll be working with the children of Cairo, street children of Cairo, maybe an Aswan as well. And I'd like to thank someone, if she's watching today, Kadriye. Kadriye has been a great help by finding these children and people to help us deliver our aid there. We'll still be working in Indonesia, in a village, in an island in Indonesia. We helped rebuild the mosque there and the village school, and also sent all the children clothes, and there's a picture of them there.
Oh wow, look at that.
Yeah.
Look at that, you're giving people hope. I mean, it's
It is.
amazing.
It is.
isn't
It's
it?
building bridges
So
as well with different
fulfilling.
communities, and we'll continue in Bangladesh as well, and we do a lot of work in Cyprus.
And that's what I like about your projects, is like we were discussing before the programme started, you know where your money is gone.
Absolutely.
It's very hands-on. Like you said, there's a picture there. Those individuals have benefited from your project.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think smaller projects, that's the magic about smaller projects.
think
There's so
so.
much, it's literally hit the source,
Yeah.
and you can see who you've helped and made a difference. I mean, that's going to make a huge difference to those children's lives for the future, not just now
Absolutely.
because you're educating them. It's just totally amazing.
I mean, the other
very
thing I want to say about
emotional.
HUSAYN is that when Cyprus Islamic Association takes on a project, they account for every penny that comes through by people who donate, and then afterwards the full where the money's been fully spent is also given to the
Yeah,
public.
that's
So
really
Right,
important.
it's
you
down
keep
to
gaining
T.
people's
Yeah,
trust,
That's
don't
right.
you?
Trust
Of
is really,
course.
really
Yes,
important.
it is.
And I've got to thank TCCA as well, because they've always allowed us to go under their roof and do all our
Yeah.
charitable work under their roof. We're going to probably still we're going to continue our homeless project for Christmas. And those who are watching, on the 21st of December, hopefully this year, we'll be in Charing Cross, Cyprus Islamic Association. I'm sure TCCA will be there with us
I
as
will
well.
be there. I'm gonna
And
come as well.
Turkish Cypriot Youth Association.
Association.
And if Nafia Horozoglu is watching,
Yes.
thank you, Nafia.
Oh,
So
lovely. It's getting the youngsters
We'll
involved.
be
That's
there.
That's really,
And that's
really
really important to me
isn't
this
it?
year,
Yeah.
is to
Yeah.
have youngsters there
That's
this
right.
year
Our
to
future.
help.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
ERIM, your future projects?
Yeah, I mean,
projects that you're
so
doing?
obviously TCCA is
Yes.
always doing projects. You had a couple of our colleagues who are starting the youth
Yeah.
project here recently.
Yes.
So we've got a myriad of other projects. I think, what's his name? Ahmed Havalu came down here, so he's one of our officers, sorry. So he came down here, he's doing a health project in Hackney, and that's
Yeah.
really successful. Outside of TCCA, we do a lot of joint projects, and I act as a consultant for a number of Turkish organisations, Liman Solar, the Turkish Education Forum, the so loads of organisations that we're trying to work with to develop their projects and what they're doing. The main thing that I'm focused on at the moment is homelessness, because as we know, that Christmas is the period where we all kind of tune into homelessness, but homelessness is an ongoing issue.
It really is.
The biggest problem is that what we do with regards to supporting the homeless, it's good, but it's only putting a plaster over the bigger picture. So what we've trying to do is that we've met up and we've kind of worked with this organisation called Buses for the Homeless. Now, what Buses for the Homeless do is that they develop old buses that are no longer used into accommodation and other units which help people go through the period of time being homeless back into society.
Yes.
The aspect of what we want to do is to do something called Haven for the Homeless, and my partner Robbie is actually leading on that project, and that's going to be a project that we want to have a permanent base in North London, where 20 people who are homeless will be housed for a period of 3 months. During that 3 months they'll be educated, they'll be found jobs, and they'll be reintroduced into mainstream society. So in effect, one of these projects that we want to do will reintroduce 80 people over a year's period. And if we try to get 4 of them in London, 1 north, 1 east, 1 south, 1 west, I think that we'll be doing enormous help to individuals who are left out on the streets. But obviously we will continue to work with HUSAYN in being able to go out there and help the homeless.
Yes.
But I think that what we need to do as well is to try and to do more. Yeah, it's like if someone has an illness, you kind of give them some aspirin, but it doesn't do it. No, it doesn't.
And I think
the picture, of course, to get them back into
Yeah.
society.
Right.
That's what they want. Ultimately,
And it's
of
also,
course.
we should mention in the programme as well that, you know, anybody could be made homeless.
Yeah, exactly.
It does.
Exactly.
It goes over the board of. Depends what. Doesn't matter what kind of nationality you are or colour you are.
Yeah.
Anyone could be homeless.
Yeah.
This year we've seen 2 deaths of one Turkish mainlander and a Turkish Cypriot guy last week.
Yeah.
A young Turkish Cypriot guy who died on the street.
And the thing you notice is that one of the first events I went to, HUSAYN brought me there, which was Who is HUSAYN? It's not this HUSAYN, it's another HUSAYN.
There's lots of Husayns in our culture.
And what it was that it's an event where you give out to the community, and then you chat to people. So my task was there to try and introduce myself to the individuals there, just talk to them, treat them like human beings. And the stories that were coming out from these individuals, you couldn't believe. You know, one person had missed 1 month's rent and been out on the street. 1 person went through depression and then basically shut him off from the world, and he was shut off from the world for 2 months. Then he ended up on the street. One was educated, a professor of something or other, and
tragic.
And he just moved away from everything, and then just basically became isolated and then was out on the street. So it could happen to anyone. It's not just people who are involved in drugs or alcohol. It happens to anyone. It doesn't matter what age, from the age of 15 right the way to in your 90s, you could be homeless.
Well, this is the thing. So we do need to reach out and think about more long-term solutions. We've only got a couple of minutes left, about 5 minutes left, so there's a few things I want to sort of go over. I'd like to speak about this fabulous book here about Cypriot heritage. We'll discuss this again before the programme about how important it is to put things together. Let's quickly touch upon
this book was donated to TCCA. It's a book that relates to the original Ottoman listings of things that happen in Cyprus, court rulings, this, that, the other. It's been translated into Turkish.
We'll be translated into English very soon.
Yeah, and what we're going to do is put this on the system so people can access it. It's going to be there available rather than having to go and look for it left, right and centre, not knowing it's even there. But if we safeguard this, future generations can use it.
Fantastic. And the last point that I'd like to talk about is the fact that these projects, all of them, they're very meaningful, very forward-thinking, very much sort of hands-on, really actually helping individuals change their lives. So I commend you for that. But I also feel like it is bringing our community together, and I wanted just your last thoughts about what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, is that if we put aspects like politics aside and we think about us as human beings, how we want to help those most in need within our community, we can achieve so much far more as a group, rather than saying that you are this or you are that, and then just try not to work together and trying to work around division of each other. The perfect example of this is the cemetery project, which has been operating for about 2 years, and you've got people from the Conservative side, people from the Labour side, people from the Lib Dems, people who are housewives, people who are in fully functioning jobs with high earners, all coming together for a common goal. And that's been, that I want to replicate those sorts of concepts with other projects that we do, where we come together as a community. We don't say that send soldiers and send soldiers and all that sort of thing. It's just working to better what we have as a community and looking at those most in need and trying to target those to help those people.
I always talk with ERIM about this, and I think it's really important that we as a community in London, we're not a very, very big community, but we're not a small community as well. But we need to put some of our differences aside for the benefit of the next generation. If we want to keep this Turkish Cypriot generation flourishing, knowing each other, then we need to put our political differences, all different types of differences aside and build bridges with each other. We need to work together for the benefit of the community. We'll only do that if we put our differences aside, and it will benefit the whole community.
Yeah, I really do think so. I'm in full agreement, and we are in absolute support of you here. We'd like to have you come on again, talking about your separate projects, and obviously this project is very intriguing. I'm very, very fascinated to see how it progresses. We've done a shout out to everybody out there. If you do have any information, be it pictures or video reels or any stories or even knowing people, please get in touch. On a very positive note, because I think we've ended on a very positive note, it's about bringing the communities together, remembering our heritage, and having something that we can leave behind for our youngsters, really, our future generations. It's been a lovely evening. Thank you very much for coming on my programme. Thank you. And that's it from us from Eurogenj TV. Have a very good evening. Thank you. Goodbye.